Welcome, everyone, to RB1 : a fantasy, a football, a podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, rom-com aficionado, conductor of the now completely dead and defunct Devin Funchess hype train, worshiper of N'Keal Harry, friends with the Oracle, constant doubter of Alvin Kamara, and would like you to kindly wear a mask so we can all watch Cam Newton remind the NFL just how good he is. Your humble host, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by all of the guys. We have the Duck Father, recovering Texans fan, DK Metcalf's #1 admirer, caster of the double reverse chutzpah, champion of doggos everywhere, proponent for a Jon Snow hair product line, and the man formerly known as Steve Timberland, resident old man Clark Barnes. WNBA hot take machine, El Sabatua, the captain of the Buccaneers bandwagon, proud father of Quentin Nelson, Scotty Miller fanboy, the best cornhole partner in the world, according to Jimmy Graham, the coach whisperer, the wine sipperer, the Will Disleyer, the working girl Jordan Smith, and finally, fantasy football's premier internet doctor, the biggest 49ers fan you know, Larry Fitzgerald's lone admonisher, the #2 Walter Sobchak, but #1 Tarzan, fan of what scientists lovingly call, quote, facts, teacher of the if you're not cheating, you're not trying mentality, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, Nick Butterfur, the ginger mustache man. I don't care about you two, Jordan or Nick. I care about Clark, and congratulations on his nuptials.
Thank you, Pete. You're in mid-season form with the introductions.
Ahead of time to have them all refreshed on the mind and on the tongue. Yeah. But, well, congratulations. Do you feel wildly different now that you are a married man?
Nope. Pretty much the same. I just have jewelry now. So,
have you gotten used to the jewelry? I know it's probably been a little bit that. I
haven't worn jewelry since I stopped wearing watches when I was like 19. For fans of the show, you'll know that was like 30 years ago. And so, yeah, taking some getting used to.
Yeah, I will say in quarantine, I have not worn my ring since like April probably. But when I do put it on to occasionally it does. I am reminded of the oddness of having it on.
What I'm looking forward to more today is these AFC West players that I would put a ring on this year in fantasy.
Clark Barnes coming for my host job. Look at this man. He is a happily betrothed man, and he's coming to get a promotion. Look at him. We're going to tackle the AFC West today. We're going to do our deep dive. On Tuesday's show we got there. It was a bit of a hot mess. We were initially going to try to do the AFC and NFC South, which we should have known that it's impossible for us not to spend hours upon hours talking about the AFC South and its ripe fantasy players for the plucking. And so since we didn't combine those, we are now just going to stay in the AFC, and we're going to do the West this episode. But before we get to that, we do have a little bit of news. First on the news bulletin, 2 Dolphins wide receivers have announced that they are opting out. Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson both have said that they will not play in 2020. Now, this may not seem like groundbreaking news. However, the two of them counted for, let me do some quick math right here, 109 targets last year in the Dolphins offense. So that is a good amount of work that now is going to get shared between, obviously, Devonte Parker, Preston Williams coming back, and Mike Gesicki, who I think that this is a particular good boost for. Clark, I know you are a Devonte Parker fan. Are you now just through the moon now that there's an extra 100 targets that he gets to eat into?
I think Parker is appropriately priced now. Unfortunately, I think this is more for Gesicki and whoever will enter the slot conversation for the Dolphins.
Let me try to push you over the edge, Clark. Preston Williams may or may not be ready for week 1 per a report, I think, from today.
Uh-oh.
Devonte Parker is about to get 200 targets in the first week of football.
This is something we'll touch on, I think, later. But I really hate drafting players on teams that are not going to be very good. It's a really tough decision to do that, and just more on that later. So I like Devonte Parker. I really like Tua Tagovailoa, and Ryan Fitzpatrick has a special place in my heart, but I just hate betting on players that are on bad teams.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there, Clark. It's hard to draft players in a redraft league on a team that you just know is going to be full of question marks. I like that this probably helps Devontae Parker get more attention than he otherwise would have. Preston Williams might get some targets once he gets on the field. Mike Gesicki might get some of those targets. Isaiah Ford played a little bit last year. Jakeem Grant is still there. Don't ask me how I know these names. I just do right now. They might get some of that load, but I don't think it's going to be as much as if Albert Wilson was still there.
It might also mean we might get to see a little bit if Matt Breida stays healthy, that it might be you might see some of those targets go to him coming out of the backfield. But it'll be interesting to see how this Dolphins offense plays out. But obviously not big names opting out, but certainly they had a role in the offense. Moving on in the news, Marquise Brown, as one does in the offseason, the boy bulked up. He has gained 23 pounds of muscle, according to some reports, and is now playing at 180 pounds as opposed to the 157 pounds that he played last year. So, Nick, as our resident doctor, is that good for a 5'9" receiver to have that much weight on his knees?
That I don't think is an issue at all. What I am curious about is trends of receivers gaining weight, because running backs like early in their career who bulk up, like Le'Veon Bell is a perfect example. He went up to 600, Jesus Christ.
Le'Veon
he was 6 feet tall and 600 pounds.
Back.
Yeah, he went up to 241 pounds, I think, to enter his rookie year. And then he dropped down to like 225 his next year. And that's when he really popped off. And so anyway, this is something we should also talk about with Ronald Jones apparently having monstrous calves because he's bulked up. Anyway, I don't know what the science is.
Don't worry, we'll get to Ronald Jones. He's in the news.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I don't know what the science is or the trends indicate as far as wide receivers gaining weight earlier in their career. I don't think he's going to go slower than like a 4.340 though. And so I think he's okay. I think he'll be all right. And it's good that he's not 157 pounds in the NFL.
It is kind of crazy that I didn't realize that what his playing weight was until I saw the tweet that was like saying that he gained this much. And I was like, 157 pounds is a small person for NFL.
I'm seeing that he weighed in at the combine at 166, which might be just a situation of putting on a good amount of weight to weigh well at the combine. So like 14 pounds adding on to like a guy who's going to be in his second year in the league, it's probably just a case of him being young and getting up to 180. He's still pretty light at 180 for an NFL player.
As someone who's struggled with weight for their entire life, you always round in your favor. So I'm talking about losing weight, right? So I'm always like, oh, I was up to like 310, 315. And really, I was like closer to 300. So he was probably in the 160 range. But he was like, we got to make this headline pop. 114-pound Marquise Brown bulks up, adding 73 pounds over the offseason. That's a much more interesting headline than I put on 8 pounds. You know.
Yep. I like that. That Marquise Brown.
So I'm actually
75 pounds of muscle.
I want to dissent here because I think where he did weigh in was his pro day. And that's where we got the 166. So I'm, as of now, a believer that he was 157. And I also wouldn't be surprised if he managed to just like chug water, eat snacks, tip the scales a little bit, but recovering from a Liz Frank and not being able to work out and then just like going into the cardio of NFL games, I would not be surprised if his actual weight during the season did drop down to 157 if it wasn't that all along. Either way, now he's a whopping 180. And
we clearly need to know more. So Marquise Brown, please consider coming onto the podcast and tell us about how you gained 23 pounds this offseason.
Still very excited about Marquise Brown, regardless of weight concerns.
Yeah. Well, we will when we get to the our AFC North deep dive, I'm sure we'll discuss him because he's exciting. He scored 7 touchdowns last year, which somehow I feel like it did not register that he scored that many. Anywho's, finally in the news, Nick's favorite player in the entire NFL is now the main guy in the Buccaneers backfield, according to Bruce Arians, and that is one Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is the main man, despite the fact that they signed LaShawn McCoy, despite the fact that they draft Keyshawn Vaughn. These are the words coming from Bruce Arians' mouth. Jordan, on a scale of 1 to not at all, how much do you believe Bruce Arians?
I don't know. I think that's kind of a weird thing to say at this point in the offseason. And now that you've actually mentioned his name and we were just talking about players gaining weight, I believe I saw somebody say yesterday that they were near Ronald Jones or something, and they said that he looks swole now too. Like he was.
Everyone's just getting swole this offseason.
His calves were spoken of. Monstrous calves.
He has monster calves now. I don't know how
that's
much
it's a good fantasy team name. If you draft Ronald Jones's calves, good fantasy team name.
By my count, they've brought in 3 different running backs over the offseason. So I don't know if I really believe that.
So, or do you have a witticism, Pete? Okay. What we talked about last week with the LaShawn McCoy thing was just that he's good at pass pro. Durde Ogunbowale and Keyshawn Vaughn are good pass catchers. I think Jones is just going to be the battering ram, and I think he's going to get 15 carries a game. And that will probably carry value to some degree if they can pull off, to borrow from a different team, but a Tom Brady team, like a LeGarrette Blount role, because the defense is going to continue to give them short fields because the defense is like lights out. I don't think they're going to have a ton of yardage, but I think that they'll be in scoring position a lot. So it might be a low volume, lucrative role that ends up giving you points from time to time. But I'm sure there are going to be a couple of weeks where, nothing happens and it comes back to bite you.
I just include these little segments in the news just to watch Clark roll his eyes at anything a coach says.
I saw someone tweet this, and I'm just going to steal it, and I forget who it is, but the return to normalcy with so-and-so put on weight. This disappointment from last year had a fantastic camp. It's just, it's just so nice. We're back, baby. Football's back.
We are back. Oh, football is here. Yes, that things are back.
Best
and ready
camp
to go.
of his life. Well, at least we'll be spared that for like a couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, it's somehow there's still somehow that's going to leak. It's going to be like he was the best in non-contact padded practice that we've ever seen him before. And you're like, yes.
New Dolphins left tackle smells wonderful. That's the kind of stories I'm here for.
There you go. That's how you draft your team, purely based on perceived aroma. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there's your news. We're going to get into the AFC West now. If you didn't listen to Tuesday's podcast where we broke down the AFC South, first of all, you should. Second off, we do this by going through 4 different categories. We have the must drafts, which we have rebranded under Clark's astute eye, into trustworthy elites, we're calling them now. Players who are going in the first 2 to 3 rounds, who, if you're going to draft them, you need them, you need the confidence in them that they're going to produce. So these are guys who we trust that they are worth their high ADP. A league winner, pretty self-explanatory. Someone who we are not drafting wherever they are, and that doesn't mean they're going to bust, but just rather we don't love them at their current ADP. Could also mean they're going to bust. And then finally, a late round sleeper. And just to really boost up the level of production that this podcast has got, we have nice little sound bites for each segment. So let's start off with the trustworthy elites. There's no one more trustworthy than the elites. Waiter, I ordered the 89 Chateau, not the 99. So, let's talk trustworthy elites. Jordan, why don't you start us off with who's going in the early rounds that you are drafting without hesitation from the AFC West?
So the guy I picked here to kind of just give you week to week good production is Josh Jacobs with the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to keep on trying to say that throughout the show. Mostly because I do like his value. He's going a little bit lower than some of the key top tier running backs, but I still think he's a running back that could just slip right into the top 10, top 8 for the season. Last season, PFF graded him first in forced missed tackles, and he had an overall grade of 87.1, which was second among running backs. So take that for whatever you think it's worth however high you value PFF grades. And his usage could and should go way up because I feel like the only veteran they added was Jason Whitten. And that's not exactly great. They added a couple of rookies. Yes, they have Ruggs. Ruggs should eat into a little bit of his work. As far as the short passes go, they added Lynn Bowden Jr. In the draft, which I'm not really concerned that much with him vulturing because he is a running back / wide receiver. They had to come out and tell us which position he was going to play. So coming into an off season like this, I don't know how well they're going to integrate him into the offense right away. And last year, their offensive line was pretty decent. They were 6th in adjusted line yards. So it's a unit that can move bodies pretty well. Got to put some respect on Rodney Hudson's name, one of the best centers in the league. And Jacobs has good pass catching ability, and they've been telling us this offseason that they want Jacobs to be more of a all-around type of running back, a 3-down back. So I'm just trying to believe as much as I can what John Gruden is saying.
Yeah, I initially had Josh Jacobs as my not drafting pick, but then, Jordan, I saw you had him as your trustworthy elite, and I was like, okay, let me reevaluate my thought process here. Because initially my thought process was he wasn't used in the passing game at all last year, right? He only saw 27 targets, which is not great. And with him going ahead of guys like Miles Sanders or Kenyon Drake, I was like, would I rather Josh Jacobs over someone like Miles Sanders or Kenyon Drake? But I think the thing that works for Josh Jacobs is the fact that he is going to be the workhorse in that running back. He's the workhorse in that backfield for that team. He saw 242 rushes last year, and that was on 13 games. So I think he compares to Derrick Henry's usage, and the fact that Derrick Henry does plenty on the ground to make him a very serviceable fantasy player, even though his receiving game is lacking. And if they do seriously uptick Josh Jacobs' passing usage, then that just makes him even more valuable in fantasy. So ultimately, you changed my mind, Jordan. Well done.
Yeah, this is one of those really good players on an incredibly crappy team that I don't want any part of. I like that you threw the PFF grades out there because my meathead analysis is I just watched some Raiders games from last year, and Josh Jacobs is really good. He's a fantastic running back. There's no reason that he didn't get the ball passed to him last year. In the games that he played, he was absolutely the focus of the Raiders offense. And we can say what we want about Chucky, and most of it's true, but he wants to run the football, and he wants to run the football with one running back. And we saw that last year with Jacobs playing out there with a broken shoulder for 3 games because no one in that organization was mature enough to take care of your first-round draft pick, maybe thinking longevity-wise. But Jacobs going at, I think, number 10 or number 12, something like that. If you're going to take your pick out of the kind of third-tier running backs, I think it's a great option. It just sucks that you need touchdowns from your running back, and the Raiders are just – Derek Carr loves nothing more than throwing the ball 3 yards downfield on 4th and 28. And so it's just – their offense is just really frustrating to watch.
All right, so I'm pumped to take a Gandalf, you shall not pass stand against all of you guys on this one. So sorry for my plane going by. All right, Josh Jacobs. So the Raiders – their schedule shapes up to be much more of a shootout type deal. Now, there are Matthew Berry reported that Mayock said that he's going to be more involved in the passing game. There's an ESPN reporter who just asserted this. He didn't give any reason why. But what we're looking at is a running back who was one-dimensional last year, very good rusher, but wasn't used in the passing game. The team felt the need to go re-sign Jalen Richard. They brought in Rod Smith and Devonte Booker. Both Rod Smith is dual threat, but good pass catching back. Devonte Booker is a pass catching back. They drafted Lynn Bowden Jr. As Jordan noted, he was a wide receiver / running back. So this guy has premier pass catching ability. And as soon as they drafted him during the draft, the team announced he is a running back. So I've said this before, but when I look at this, I see Josh Jacobs and then 4 pass catching backs that they decided to place on the roster behind him. That doesn't indicate to me that they want to give him a whole lot of passing work. Now, they might, maybe let's say that they do want to. They still don't have an actual full off-season or training camp to implement to work on his hands, to work on his route running. He's not going to get the time that they would have wanted to give him. And then the only other thing I know I always go to schedule, but like just looking at this schedule, Panthers, Saints, Pats, Bills, Chiefs, these are all great offenses, and it doesn't get any. I mean, Bucks, Browns, Chargers. Anyway, the teams that they're playing are going to be putting them into at best neutral game scripts, and very likely into negative game scripts where they're going to have to pass. And if this guy just isn't ready to handle it, I'm not optimistic. And were he going perhaps more in the range that Clark listed as maybe the RB12, then that is something that I might be a little bit more interested in. But he's not. In half-point PPR, he's going off the board with the 13th overall pick as the running back 9. It's going to be real tough for me to pull the trigger on him that early on with what I see as a limited usage in the offense.
So those are really good points. And just to provide a slight counter to that, watching some games today, the Chiefs beat the Raiders 40-9 late last year. In that game, Joshua Jacobs had 17 carries for 104 yards. And so game script is something that's really important to look at, and projecting schedule, I think, is something that's important to look at. And even with my take, I was saying, I really like Josh Jacobs, but the Raiders suck. You were just saying in a much more eloquent way and providing reasons of why that was, which I respect. But just to add the other perspective, just because someone's playing a good team and a coach maybe shouldn't run the ball doesn't mean that a coach like John Gruden won't. And so that's just, I think Jacobs is that kind of player. He's
that's fair.
So good. But yeah, really good points by you too, Nick. And I think that's why he is slipping and falling, and why he's not just an ultimate, no-brainer first rounder.
If I get him,
I would also.
Oh, go ahead.
I would add that Josh Jacobs has good hands. Like he can catch passes. It's just a matter of them actually using him in that way.
Yeah. All right, Nick, why don't you give us the trustworthy elite that you're buying this from the AFC West this year in fantasy?
Trustworthy elite. Okay, so foreshadowing. We'll have a 2-part answer to this, and half of it will come later on. I was very down on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now I'm very up on him. We touched on this on actually the last show. But basically, what I'm seeing here is Damian Williams was a good running back, already established with the team. He's opted out. Now they've got their first-round pick, who is the presumptive starter. I think that his per-game touch total to start the season with Williams opting out goes from like 15 or 16 to 18 to 20. And that's extremely valuable in this, like, 4 more touches in this offense, especially if 2 or 3 of them are coming through the passing game, is extremely valuable. And the Chiefs offense, they're run so well, and they're run so well, the schedule doesn't matter. The way that Andy Reid schemes these guys, like, this is one of the best offenses of all time. I think they do have some difficulty in their offense, but I don't think any of us are going to tell you that the Chiefs are not going to put up a ton of points. So anyway, Damian Williams exiting, I believe, puts Clyde Edwards-Helaire into like locked in RB1 territory, which is not where I had him previously. And yeah, now I would take him as a end of first, early second round pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's tough, and I'll have more on the Chiefs situation later. And the worry with Edwards-Helaire is not that he's not talented, it's that he's about 5'7" and he's 200 pounds. That's really small. We have seen some small guys in the NFL make it, and we've seen some really big dudes get hurt. And so this isn't a binary option of you're either big or you're going to get hurt. But he's a really little guy, and he's going to be a rookie. Having said all of that, one of the guys that I'll talk about later that I was really excited about, Darwin Thompson, last year, they were signing guys off the street to play over Darwin Thompson. So they were really unhappy with what they had at running back. I think they really liked Damian Williams, and him leaving, I think, opens the door for Edwards-Helaire. And I doubt that he's going to get past the 5th or 6th round in most home leagues once this thing really starts going. We've already seen a bunch of expert drafts where people are posting that he went 101. This thing is about to get nuts.
Oh yeah, he's going in the early 3rd right now. But yeah, just show note. Me and Clark should just 1-2 punch the the tail end of the show because we got a nice little spicy debate.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for the note, Nick. Clark and Nick coming for my job. I'll quickly throw my trustworthy elite out too, because I don't think there's going to be much debate about him, and he's also on the Chiefs. Travis Kelsey. I mean, I just think that if you want to go tight end early, he is the tight end you pick. He is just like, without fail, the tight end one in the NFL. He's the only tight end outside of George Kittle, but even George Kittle has me a teensy tiny bit worried, who is like, he is the offense and then some. Like, Travis Kelsey's not seeing less than 120 targets unless he gets injured this year. So I just think that if you want to pull the trigger early on a tight end, Travis Kelsey is by far and away the guy to do it. He's going 17 overall, which means you're going to take him early in the second round. But I've done mocks before where I will go, like, if I get Saquon or Zeke, running back 1, Travis Kelsey 2, and then I can still get someone like who's falling down. I can get Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, if he's going at the beginning of the third round, but
that's
if
over.
Yeah, that's not happening anymore. That's not happening anymore. But I like Chris Carson, for instance. Like, I think Chris Carson can be easily a RB2. And now I've got like one of the best running backs, the best tight end. And we've talked about how much depth there is at wide receiver, that I'm okay waiting until the 4th or 5th round to draft him. Basically, Travis, like, don't worry about Travis Kelsey possibly maybe finally falling off. Like, he's the most reliable tight end in fantasy this year yet again.
So just to stick up for Kittle very briefly, the dude is trending for insane positive touchdown regression. And with Deebo Samuel out for, I think, quite a while, a Jones fracture is no joke. And the team initially tried to play it off like that wasn't. Anyway, I'm still really high on Kittle. I think that the Kelsey pick is super interesting. And I think that if I was to go with it in the second round, then I would be hoping for a Chiefs stack. I'd be hoping that Mahomes, sorry, the dog's upset. Buddy, you got to chill.
He loves Travis Kelsey.
He's like, Nick, how dare you? How dare you say George Kittle is as good as Travis Kelsey in fantasy this year?
But, okay, so wrapping up the point here, studies are beginning to show that stacking, which is a technique typically used in daily fantasy where you get guys on the same team and you make sure you get the quarterback, is actually a really good season-long strategy. It's producing a high win rate. So I think if I do go Kelsey, then I'm really hoping that Mahomes falls into the third round so I can take them and just eat up all their points.
Yeah. All right, Clark, why don't you wrap up the trustworthy elites with a guy who I'm sure will bring some discussion.
And so I think at about pick 11 or 12, I'm happy to go Kelsey, and it's because of something that I've talked about on the podcast before, and I'm going to do it again this week. It's kind of in vogue because in 2019 we had a lot of really strong running back performances and a lot of strong running back performances that people predicted. That the pendulum has just swung completely away from the 0 RB idea, and everybody's talking about how deep wide receiver is, and that's true. And when you look at the end-of-year rankings, you see a bunch of wide receivers that are all relatively equal. We're forgetting this is a week-to-week game. There's a lot of really up-and-down wide receivers, and I would contend that wide receiver is not incredibly deep. There are still like those 5 or 6 guys that are just absolutely amazing, head and shoulders above the others. And so I think taking someone like Devonte Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, or Michael Thomas, and then coming back with Kelsey, and then going with someone like my must-draft guy, Melvin Gordon, in the third round is a strong way to go. The Broncos, I don't think, are going to be very good, so we've got a little bit of I don't like taking players that are going to be on a bad team. But the Broncos went out, paid Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon's been a really serviceable back for a long time, and the way that you protect your young, not very good quarterback is to run the ball. So I think Melvin Gordon is just going to get volume, and that in the third round I think is an incredible value instead of him going in the first and second like we've seen for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I think Gordon, unfortunately, is somebody who I'm just not going to be getting very many shares of. Something that makes me really nervous is that they're retooling the offense. So they had Rich Scangarello there at offensive coordinator last year, and he did I thought a good job, but they chose to get rid of him. And so they're implementing a new system. He was on the Chargers last year. He's going to a new team. And as you said, they're not going to be very good. So I just, for all the reasons for everything that you said already, Clark, for like what the warts are, they just kind of scare me. And I think that I'm going to end up in the third round, hoping I haven't checked his ADP, but I mean, if James Conner is still going in the third, I can't draft him quickly enough.
I think he's around there. So this was the first time I've looked at this consensus ADP, and I was kind of surprised with where I think people are lagging.
Melvin Gordon is 32 overall, RB 17.
I think Connor's like 40, 41.
I have Melvin Gordon as a stay away.
So you're alluding that you'll talk about him later, Jordan, playing it saucy and loose.
Yeah, just a few bulletins. We'll get through the regular scheduled program first.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm actually, I think Melvin Gordon, Clark, would fit right into what I was talking about with Travis Kelsey. We work well together, Clark, is what I'm saying. That he also, Melvin Gordon is someone who I would happily take as an RB2 in that third round if I went, RB wide receiver or RB tight end or even RB QB, then I would happily have Melvin Gordon as a running back 2 for me, which would free up one of those spots to do something cool with. All right, well, let's move on to league winners. But before we do, we are going to take a quick ad break. All right, we are back, and it is time. Oh my gosh, I did it! I just landed a league winner! So, these are guys who, maybe are not going super high, but they are people who have a really good chance to massively outplay their ADP and could be so productive that they could ultimately win you a fantasy championship. Nick, why don't we start with you? Who do you have from the AFC West as your league winner?
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I'm just well. Anyway, I'll save my joke for later on. Henry Ruggs. It'll get better with age. So Ruggs is coming off the board as the wide receiver 50 at pick number 137. His specialty is that he's faster than everybody else that's on the field. What I like about in the world, and so what I like about rookie wide receivers whose primary hat or trick that they pull out of the hat is just to go downfield and burn the rest of the defense. That's not something that is challenging. You don't have to train or you don't have to coach them like a possession receiver where they have to win through technical means. Like a guy I'm thinking of here is like DK Metcalf. At first, Pete Carroll just said, run as fast as you can. They developed him as the season progressed. John Gruden, he typically likes to have one big bad running back and one big bad wide receiver. Last year, the receiver aspect was kind of platooned with Darren Waller and Tyrell Williams. I think Tyrell Williams is a fine veteran possession receiver. Yeah, the dog is just so angry right now. And Waller, he's a great story. Came out of nowhere after struggling with substance abuse for a few years. But I think that Ruggs has the opportunity to step in and assume number one wide receiver target role. Waller could still push him and Williams will still get his own, but they just didn't really have anybody who was going downfield. Like Hunter Renfrow is a decent receiver, but he is really slow and it's tougher for him to get down the field. So I think Ruggs just steps into a situation where the downfield targets just belong to him. And again, it's not a very complex thing that they're going to be asking him to do. I think that he will get work around the line of scrimmage. I think they will ask him to do more than just that. But I think that he's got deep shots with his name on every game. And like I was referring to in the Josh Jacobs section, they're basically playing teams that are going to be putting tons of points up on the board. And theoretically, Clark, to your point, putting them in a pass-happy game script. So, the wide receiver at pick 137, that's it's like the 12th round, 11th round. Yeah, that's awesome.
And at that point, if he doesn't do anything, you're like, cool, who cares? It was my 12th round pick. But you're right that he has wide receiver 2 I think wide receiver 2 is almost a given for him and possible just in the sense of like what you said, he is going to be the number one guy. And I've spoken at length about this on this show is my love for Henry Ruggs. And how he's not just like, he has the speed to just be a downfield burner, but he's also not. He's also can run, all kinds of routes on the route tree. And so I think while we'll see him use his speed to start the season as like getting big plays downfield, we could see then his role increase even more so, or he become a more refined receiver throughout the year, however long the year might be.
So in the where he finishes, I don't think matters, right? But if you're taking him in the 10th round, it is pretty easy for me to tell the story about how, man, I'm feeling really good about starting Ruggs week 7 here against the Cowboys, because he does have the potential to be explosive. And we're going to see pretty early on, whether he's start worthy, whether we want to hang on to him, or maybe whether we'll be looking at him next year. Played at Alabama, high level of competition, looked really good at Alabama. So fast and, like you said, a good receiver. 10th round pick. If you give anyone a hard time for their favorite 10th round pick, I want to talk to you, just see what you're thinking. But yeah, this is definitely a guy to take a shot on, because even though Derek Carr seems allergic to throwing the ball deep, I don't know, maybe Mariota will push him a little bit and we'll see Ruggs being explosive this year.
Yeah, Pete mentioned earlier that Hollywood Brown had 7 touchdowns somehow last year. So there's no reason that like Henry Ruggs doesn't have that as some sort of floor. I mean, the touchdowns, give or take, but at least the overall season that Hollywood Brown had, because Hollywood Brown was injured for a lot of it. One of the frustrating parts about Derek Carr's game is that he can throw a really pretty deep ball. They just don't, or he just doesn't. So hopefully like Ruggs gives him the confidence to actually chuck it downfield if they decide to use his speed, because he's got that kind of speed that makes safeties and corners be like, God damn it, how did he get back there? Like he's just past them, like John Brown, like Hollywood, like a lot of these guys.
You know who also has that speed? Clark, your league winner, Mr. Mikol Hardman.
Yeah, so we're looking at about the same time in the draft. This is well after you've picked the people that you've fooled yourself into thinking are going to be on your team all year, and you're just taking shots on people. So Mikol Hardman, in his second year with Kansas City, showed us last year that, yeah, he ran a really fast 40, but he also looked like he ran that really fast 40 on the field in pads. The knock against Hardman, and he's probably, to be generous, 4th in the pecking order for targets behind Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, and whoever is playing running back. But I think Sammy Watkins is not long for this team, or certainly not long for being the number 2 wide receiver. And I think that this is one of those situations where the offensive pie is going to be so big in Kansas City that even if you think my Hardman take is bad, you should be taking shots on someone who's an auxiliary player in Kansas City later in the draft. There's just so much to go around. All of these guys are an injury away from getting bumped up, and Hardman showed us last year just so incredibly fast. Oh yeah, and he's the number 2 wide receiver behind like maybe the fastest wide receiver in the league. Yeah. So good luck. Again, playing Kansas City this year.
Yeah.
I agree with this one because, again, it's a late round pick, but also it's like, I was going to mention this before with Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelsey, is that part of you just wants to get a piece of the Chiefs offense. If Patrick Mahomes can stay on the field for the full length of the season, then you're just like, yeah, I want to get a piece of that pie. Like last year, I don't know if you guys felt this, but in several of like dynasty leagues, when Tyreek Hill, if he would miss a game or some time, or if Sammy Watkins went down, it was just, oh yeah, I want to try to get to Marcus Robinson. Let's add him to the roster, or whoever
Pringle.
Else.
Literally
Pringle,
anyone who stepped foot on the field that could catch a ball.
They were using their full fab on whatever backup Kansas City wide receiver. So yeah, just got to get a piece of it.
It blows my mind anytime I look at Sammy Watkins' targets last year. He was targeted 90 times. That's crazy. That blows my mind. My mind is blown.
So I really like Mikol Hardman as a player. I just think it's a little it's not his time. I agree the Chiefs offense is going to score a ton. And I think that he will find the end zone a handful of times. But we're talking about getting the leftovers of Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, Sammy Watkins, as you said, who Andy Reid really, really loves. I mean, I don't know if you guys read that Bleacher Report article that it was an interview that from earlier this summer. He talks about all sorts of crazy stuff. He's part of like a male supremacist cults. It's crazy. And he
Andy
also
Reid?
talks that,
What?
No. Yeah, Sammy Watkins. Go look that
Oh.
up. That's something else. But I mean, the interview that they gave, it's a different interview, different crazy interview. This one, I mean, he talks about how he drank a ton and it really kind of had a negative impact on his body. Andy Reid loves him though. I think he kind of wants to. He does what Andy Reid asks him to on the field, and Andy Reid gets to look after him. I think that there's like a relationship that those two guys have that's always going to keep him on the field while he's still playing. So anyway, those targets plus the backfield, as you guys did say, Pringle and Robinson are there too. I think that Hardman can be a phenomenal NFL receiver, especially in this offense at some point. But I think that it will take, Watkins or Hill going out. But to pair what Clark was saying earlier on, taking him, I mean, if he is going in that like 130 range, it's the 12th round. Do it, it's not a bad time to take a flyer on a downfield threat in the Chiefs offense. I can't get on board with like, I'm pumped about this pick.
He's going 123 overall, wide receiver 46.
Okay. Yeah. So 11th round. I mean, that's good. I just wish more for him.
He just wants Mikol Hardman to hit his highest highs, then that's fair. That's respectable. Jordan, who you got for a league winner this year?
I can already feel this one being a little bit controversial, but I just wanted to give a little bit of love to Keenan Allen. I think the Chargers offense as a whole is being a little bit left behind because people are afraid of what like Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert might be bringing to the table. And rightfully so, they should be a little bit worried about it. But if this offseason is so wonky, if they at least start with Tyrod Taylor, I'd trust him as like a veteran quarterback to at least, put up some yards and get the balls to his wide receivers. And Keenan Allen is the ultimate slot, like safety blanket for a quarterback, especially a quarterback that if they put in Justin Herbert right away or after a month or after the bye week, that's somebody who's like, I need a guy that I can just count on to chuck the ball to. Keenan Allen has kind of a reputation for injury history, but he's played all 16 games the past 3 years. And in those times, he's finished wide receiver 6, 12, and 3. So going currently wide receiver 19 at 47 overall, I don't mind grabbing Keenan Allen there as possibly like your third wide receiver by that point, depending on how your draft falls. And he could easily, especially if we're talking half point PPR with this ADP, but if you're in a full point PPR league, he could be putting wide receiver 1 to 2 output while sitting in your slot. So,
yeah, I like him a lot. I'll let the other two guys talk because I'm going to string this into my league winner.
Yeah, so I did my first dynasty draft the other day, 2 QB, and I picked Keenan Allen in the 8th round. I know that it's probably not going to get that bad in your home leagues, and it shouldn't because the points you made, Keenan Allen's really, really good. And he's going to be on a bad team, but he's a fantastic wide receiver. And what did you say that he was going as? Like
47th overall, wide receiver 19.
47.
So end of the 4th round is absolutely ridiculous. There aren't going to be a lot of weeks where you feel like, I don't really want to start Keenan Allen. It's like, no, even if that team is terrible, 180 yards through the air and a touchdown is like a horrible performance, and Keenan Allen could be getting the lion's share of that. So as much as I don't like this argument, Keenan Allen is one of the great players to make the argument of I can wait on wide receiver because there are so many elite talented ones still in the draft later.
Yeah, Keenan Allen's tough for me to get on board with. We've touched on their schedule before. It sets up for a bit more of a ball control style offense, and I think that's accentuated with Tyrod Taylor being at the helm. I think it'd be accentuated even more so if Herbert finds his way onto the field. Taylor likes to throw the ball downfield rather than in the short to intermediate area where Keenan Allen dominates. And I have a tough time believing that the team is going to average more than like 20 to 25 pass attempts. There's chatter from people much smarter than myself who are actually starting to lock onto Mike Williams as the real value here, just because his downfield presence sets up a lot better with Tyrod Taylor's preferred passing area than does Keenan Allen. Even if he doesn't end up surpassing him and he's just a decent value, I still think we're looking at a bit of a crowded passing tree given the low volume of the offense. So Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, and Austin Eckler, these guys are all going to be getting theirs. And if he's throwing the ball, if Tyrod Taylor's throwing the ball 24 times a game, right? Forgive my math if it's off here, but that's 6 targets apiece. And I think that that's actually like a fairly likely or possible kind of a target distribution. And they remind me somewhat of like, we can take that kind of volume begrudgingly in Seattle, where they have 2 passing game options, and then in the red zone with Lockett and Metcalf, and Lockett is going right next to Keenan Allen. But Lockett, he's getting downfield targets, perhaps the same amount of targets, but they're downfield. They're more high leverage, and they only have to really add in tight end targets when they get into the red zone. Anyway, I'll wrap it up here. But the point is, it's a low volume offense, and I don't know that he plays really in the area of the field where he's going to be preferred, and the guys going around him I just like a lot more. So I'm unfortunately, I think he's extremely talented. Danny Kelly just put out a piece where he named him the craftiest route runner in the NFL. I think he's terrific. I just think that it's unfortunately not a great situation for him.
Yeah, see, I think the Chargers offense is one that I'm going to kind of, if everyone keeps getting depressed in value, like I'm going to buy into some of these guys, and Keenan Allen to me is one of the top guys because of what you said, Nick. Like, he can get open and he can catch. I guess, like, I mean, Bert, don't you agree that what else do you need? Yeah, he agrees. That's like, if you're, whether it's Tyrod, whether it's Justin Herbert, like if your number one wide receiver can get open reliably and can catch whatever's thrown his way, that to me seems like solid production, especially going as, wide receiver almost 20. But my league winner also from the Chargers is, and this is a little bit of a cop-out, you're going to have to kind of do your own gut pick, but it's whomever is the backup running back for Austin Eckler, whether that's Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly, who they drafted. Both of those guys, let's bring them up. Josh Jackson, or whatever his name is, Justin Jackson, is going RB 53, 107 overall, and Kelly is going RB 71, 252 overall. So that's not a pick, but basically, like I think so much has been put on Austin Eckler and the excitement around Austin Eckler, and rightfully so. Had a huge season last year, but his huge season was predominantly in the passing game. Melvin Gordon led that team in touches and attempts last year, despite only playing 12 games. He had 162 carries for 600 plus yards and 8 touchdowns. Like, I don't know if Austin Eckler is necessarily, and that was, with Austin Eckler showing what he did in the first part of the year before Gordon came back, and then playing alongside that. I think Austin Eckler will still see had more touches. He saw 132 on the ground last year. He might see more, but this isn't they're suddenly going to give Austin Eckler like 100 targets and 270 carries. So I think whatever running back that's behind Austin Eckler is huge upside for the Chargers, because of the fact that who knows what Austin Eckler is going to do on a full workload and with a back behind him. And we saw Justin Jackson have some fantasy value when it was just Austin Eckler there before Melvin Gordon returned.
You make fine points, but I have a very soft spot in my heart for little disrespected guys who play a really good half of the season. Eckler. And so, no, Pete, he's going to play 16 games. He's going to be the RB5. It's all. I have
Austin Eckler in like all of my dynasty leagues, and if he gets 270 carries and 100 targets, I am going to be the happiest man on earth. I just think for one of those backs, I mean, if you can buy them for free, if anything happens to Eckler, if there is, if we see that Eckler doesn't maybe get the lion's share of the groundwork or the red zone work on the ground, one of those guys is going to have so much value, or at least solid value, and well outplay the fact that they're going basically free right now. I would love Austin
I don't-
Eckler to just tear the league apart.
I don't think Justin Jackson is good. Like, just generally as a player, I don't think he's very good. And I think if we're talking league winners, these guys would have to have, and you hope it doesn't happen, but Austin Eckler would have to like go down with injury. And that's the only way that I feel like these guys would give you enough points to actually put you over the edge.
So I love Justin Jackson as a person. I really want to root for him. I think that Josh Kelly is a little bit more of a dual threat than Jackson is, who I think is a decent rusher, but hasn't shown a ton through the passing game. That being said, the whole veteran aspect definitely carries weight this offseason. So I do think this is probably a pick your poison. But I also want to say that if you're interested in drafting somebody other than Eckler in this backfield, you should be combing through all of the practice reports for the Chargers just to see who is getting snaps with the first and second team. Even if it's like, one of them gets 5 and the other doesn't get any, that's the guy. Go with that guy. Like if Jackson gets 5 snaps with the first team and that's it. Then that's a big
Let it
tip
ride
of the hand. Yeah. I do want to correct something. I don't think Eckler is going to get 6 targets per game. I think it'll be 3 or 4. And I said that earlier, and I just figured I just want to get that out there. It's not going to be 6 because there's no way he's going to get plus like he had like 100 targets last year. Not happening this year with Taylor. It's going to be 60, maybe 70.
This is the most painful segment Clark has ever listened to.
Sorry, Clark.
No, I just earlier you said something about Clyde Edwards-Helaire or someone getting 20 touches a game, and we're just like I am very much guilty of this, and so I won't make fun of any. But we are very bad at estimating touches. There's only a couple of players last year who got 320 catches, but you say 20 touches a game, and that just sounds normal. Like that's just what running backs get, right? And so I like your amending of like 3 or 4 targets a game for a running back is a lot. Like that's a lot of targets, and I always try to keep things like that in mind, even though I constantly forget while doing my projections and stuff like that.
Coming up next, why Rob Gronkowski is going to suck this year.
I'm leaving this podcast.
All right, let's get into players who are not drafting from the AFC West. Red alert. Red alert. Do not draft this player. Red alert. Red alert. And I'll start us off. I'm going to talk Cortland Sutton here. I am not touching Cortland Sutton anywhere in any of my leagues. I know that people are all hot on Drew Lock, even though he's played 5 games and looked adequate in those 5 games. Sutton had definitely broke onto the stage and showed us what he could do last year. I don't think he's going to repeat that. He's going as the wide receiver 18 right now. These are in this cluster of 3 receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton, all going back to back. So much rather Juju and Ridley over Sutton. Even if you go down the list, James Conner's right behind Sutton. I'd rather James Conner than Cortland Sutton. Tyler Lockett is later. Keenan Allen, Jordan's Keenan Allen. I'd rather Keenan Allen over Cortland Sutton. Basically, I'm just not sold in this Broncos offense that could have an extra emphasis on the ground game with Melvin Gordon. Now has Jerry Jeudy there. They're going to look to get Noah Fant more involved. This was the perfect storm for Cortland Sutton last year. And the biggest thing that I take away is from weeks 1 through 12, when he was playing without Drew Lock, he had 9.8 yards per target, 16.6 yards per reception. So he was getting the ball down the field. Then the 5 games that they had Drew Lock, 7 yards per target, 12.7 yards per reception. So suddenly he wasn't getting the ball as far downfield. He wasn't getting as many yards per reception. And as someone who's going to probably see his targets and receptions decrease given the number of weapons that have been added or are looked to being involved in this offense and relying on Drew Lock to be kind of all that he's cracked up to be. If he's not putting up as many yards as possible per reception, then I think that depresses his fantasy value. And I'm not buying the hype to the point where I'd draft him with the likes of Juju or Ridley.
Yeah, there's just a ton of guys going after him in ADP that I would love to take. So yeah, he's not going to be on any teams of mine.
I think out of those 3 that you just mentioned, Pete, I would take Cortland Sutton second behind Ridley. But yeah, I am a little bit worried about Drew Lock. I'm just not sure. Like, you're right. He played a few games. He played well in those games. Everybody loved him dancing on the sidelines. Like, that's cool and everything. But we're just like, and it's okay to say we're not sure if he's good yet. Like, we just don't know. So that
I feel like that
definitely
should be like you shouldn't have to like worry about that statement. I feel like that's a very obvious. Like, Drew Lock has played 5 games. He was fine in them. I don't understand why all of Denver Nation is like, Drew Lock is fucking amazing. Don't you dare say anything bad about Drew Lock.
Like, I'm sure he will be a perfectly adequate starter, maybe even better than most, but it's like, I'm just going to wait and see if this number 1 wide receiver in Denver is actually going to be the number 1, especially considering the guys that are going, like immediately after him.
Yeah, so quick board bet or beer bet opportunity for anybody who wants to say average half point fantasy points per game, Calvin Ridley over Sutton. But Cortland Sutton is being drafted at his talent or even perhaps below his talent. Like, he's phenomenal. And wide receiver 18, he probably deserves to be higher than that on talent.
If he was on a different team, if he was in a different situation, like he was great. It's just their quarterback has five starts under his belt. They get Sharp Football's second toughest slate of pass defenses this year. It's just a real difficult situation. And as everything Clark had to say about Melvin Gordon probably getting high volume is probably true. But they're switching to a new offensive coordinator. Like, there's just a lot of factors that are around Sutton that make him a really difficult draft next to guys like everyone here has said, Juju, Ridley, Connor, Mark Ingram, like Tyler Lockett is going, almost a half a round later. And like, I want him more than Sutton. Yep. Jordan, let's stay in Denver because as you've alluded to, you now finally get to talk some negativity about Melvin Gordon.
I'll go through this one quickly because we already touched on him. I just think with the Denver backfield, this one looks a little bit crowded to me, especially with Philip Lindsay, because I still think he's a pretty good player who should get touches. And it looks a little close to a 3-man rotation there. He did sit out early last year, so that impacted his fantasy output. But when he was in, he just didn't look that good. And it kind of just, to me, it was like, oh yeah, Austin Eckler's got this offense. He has proved that he is the better back in this situation. So that kind of knocks him a little bit for me. They have a relatively decent run blocking offensive line, but they just drafted a rookie to be their starting center. That kind of worries me in terms of like the communication along the offensive line. I like Lloyd Cushenberry, but again, we're talking rookies, wonky off season. Who knows how much time they're going to have to work with each other. All that stuff I just believe runs in concert. And the guys that are immediately after him in this ADP, I would draft instead of him, and that's Odell, Cooper Kupp, AJ Brown, or Mark Andrews. I would take all of them instead.
Clark, you want to fire your rebuttal?
No, I feel like that was the rebuttal. So
the rebuttal to the rebuttal.
Those are all very fine points. My favorite being the guys going after him are really appealing. But I have that soft spot in my heart for a guy who I think is going to get 250 touches at running back that I can get in the 3rd round. So.
Clark, are you sure? Are you sure that many touches?
No.
We do have a
If I knew he was going to get 250 touches, I'd probably take him in the top 2.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like
okay.
anyone who I know is going to not blow his ACL out 2 weeks into the year, I will take that person.
Want to make sure you knew you correctly estimated how many touches he might get.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for keeping me honest, bud.
I got you. All right, Nick, who are you staying away from in the AFC West this year?
Okay, so before everybody loses it, listeners especially, I'm staying away from Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, so the reason I say that, he's going in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
And bringing up, like, Clark, to reiterate the point that you just kind of made, the guys going around him are extremely appealing. Like Chris Godwin, George Kittle, Miles friggin' Sanders. There's no way that I'm taking a quarterback when I can find boom value in guys with the last 2 picks in my draft. And Mahomes, every week that he's healthy, you're starting him. It doesn't matter what the situation is. I will nerd it up here with the doctor thing. I really can't believe that he did not blanking on the ligament name, but the fact that he didn't have the reconstructive surgery on his knee is really shocking. I encourage everybody to just go look it up, look up the ligament that he tore, and then just go look up images of how that would be fixed. It's pretty wild. I mean, that kneecap is it's gonna be like a trying to hold a fish, like I don't
dangling in the wind.
Yeah, I don't know why he chose to do it, but he'll play with a brace on, and that'll probably, very good chance to play 16 games. But with the slight elevated risk of injury and having your second round pick go down, like, yeah. Now, like I said earlier, if you're stacking, okay, we can talk about it. But yeah, a quarterback in the second is just way too early for my blood.
No, I'm with you. I in a one quarterback league, there's going to be maybe 20 quarterbacks taken, 22. And in a one quarterback league, I'm very happy taking the 23rd. That the second is just way too high. I feel like if somehow you're in a league and he or Lamar are hanging around at the end of the third, early fourth, like I could squint real hard and really like my team and maybe consider it. But the middle of the second is just that's way too much.
Yeah,
and he's going to get drafted there, right? Like unless you play
he's not going to fall.
16 people who also write for some publication, like someone's going to be like, y'all are dumb. Patrick Mahomes, number 6.
Oh my God, Patrick Mahomes sitting here at 101.
And they might win. Who knows? I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, I was going to pick Mahomes just strictly from the ADP. Like second round's too rich for my flavor, and it's different than Lamar Jackson. Yes, he'll put up a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns, but he's not going to quite get the rushing yards that a Lamar would. Even still, I don't even know at this point I'd pick Lamar Jackson like that early either. So that's just against my my drafting philosophy. I will sit on quarterback for as long as it takes.
Remember Lamar was going in the 13th round last year? Whoa. We all told you to draft him, and you better. Because he would have.
I got him in every league except for one where someone listens to this show, and he took him in like the 7th, and I was about to take him. I was like, I don't care. I'm going way up.
I think he was going in the 10th. Come like slacker draft time, like preseason week 4. I can't stand it. If you were a proponent of late drafting,
unacceptable according to
Nick. Do your homework and have some courage. Draft early.
Clark, why don't you wrap up the players you're not drafting?
This one's pretty easy, and I've kind of pounded on the Raiders of why, but Darren Waller had a really great year last year, and if you picked him up off of waivers and wrote him, great. That's good. I'm really happy for you. But he's going as like the 4th or 5th tight end off the board in the 4th or 5th round, and that's just the Raiders had no wide receivers last year. Hunter Renfrow had a couple of good games, but I just do not see Darren Waller repeating. And I'm like Ricky Bobby with tight ends. I'm either going to be first or last. And, I don't want to go in the middle with my tight ends. You just avoid Darren Waller. You're in for a lot of disappointment for your 5th round pick.
I wholeheartly agree. He's not seeing 115 targets again this year. I think he's seeing maybe 80.
Jason Whitten is going to get a surprising number of – I'm not joking.
I know.
Jared
that's the crazy
thing. Hates throwing the ball downfield.
That's
like
the crazy thing.
Plotting guy who's going to be in the right spot and open. Jason
never
Witten's
forget.
Get a lot of targets
never forget. Jason Whitten saw 83 targets last year. He's going to walk into that in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I agree. If there's a highly drafted tight end that I feel like is just not going to hit those same numbers, it's probably Waller, because I just felt like that was a pretty big outlier of a season for him in terms of targets. And they brought in Henry Ruggs, and like I said before, they want to get Josh Jacobs involved in the passing game if they can. These other pass catching running backs, I feel like they don't want to force feed the tight end necessarily. So I think he might take a step back.
Yeah, I think Clark said it well with if you're not first or last, drafting middle round tight ends it's kind of a risky endeavor. You're not going to get much return on it, and you're sacrificing a lot of opportunity cost.
All right, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up the AFC West, and let's talk late sleepers. Shh. You mustn't wake the late round sleeper.
There you go. I was about to say, for those of you who aren't watching, Pete is playing a soundbite that we can't hear. So just imagine that for the past 15 seconds.
It's him whispering to you over a lullaby.
Yeah.
So whatever that's worth.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
Well,
exactly what you want for
I'm
your
going to fix it in
ASMR.
post. So when people are listening to it, they'll be like, this is very loud and clear. And then Clark comes on and it's like, I can't hear shit. All right, late round sleepers. Jordan, I know Nick and Clark have a battle royale to duke out, according to Nick. So you and I have the same sleeper, and so let's quickly touch on him. We've talked a lot. He's just come up naturally in these conversations. I am big on Hunter Renfrow this year, going way in the background of drafts, and he's wide receiver 61, going 176. I think we have a Clark wife sighting, and then she left. He a lot of hype obviously is going to Henry Ruggs, and rightfully so. But I think Hunter Renfrow, he was second on the team in targets last year with 71. He was second on the team in red zone targets last year with 10. And if you take his second half of the year, he was on pace for 109 targets, 83 catches, 1,000+ yards, and 8 touchdowns. So the guy was producing in I guess Las Vegas's offense. And I think he's going to, again, he built up chemistry with Carr. We've talked a lot about players who are coming into the system, having a leg up. And so I think I would expect him to do something similar. I think Henry Ruggs has that potential to be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 category. So he has the higher ceiling than Hunter Renfrow. But I think Hunter Renfrow's floor is really hard to pass when you're talking about him going, in like the 14th round? I can't do math, but 176 is way late.
Yeah, yes to all those points. Hunter Renfrow, first team all. I would never guess you're a professional athlete. He missed a few games last year, but like you said, he was still second on the team in targets behind Darren Waller. So he outpaced Williams for targets. He had 5 games, or no. Yeah, in the 13 games he played last year, he had at least 5 targets 8 times. He was 27th, the 27th wide receiver by DVOA last year. So I kind of like when a wide receiver is up there, in the top 32. And Ruggs could eat into his target share a little bit. But I just think, again, wide receiver 61, he's just a complete late round flyer. And if he continues to get the targets and work on that chemistry with Derek Carr to throw those 3-yard routes, then that's good for half and full PPR.
Yeah, and I think generally this isn't the kind of guy that I want to take a shot on, but if you've had a really risky rookie-filled early part of your draft, getting someone like Renfrow late to produce, solidly for you at the beginning of the year, and maybe it turns into something, I think that's a good strategy too.
Hunter Renfrow is a really interesting dude. So he's
this is where Nick comes on and says, guys, I like all the points you've said, but I am disagreeing.
It's so weird. So he's a slow receiver. He balled out in the slot. He did really well. Something that I just never would have imagined. I had to go look this up. So in early May, Evan Silva tweeted the list of yards per route run stats for last year's rookie class. We've talked about yards per route run before. It's a signature statistic of Pro Football Focus. It is proven to be predictive in terms of future wide receiver success. A.J. Brown tops the list with 2.67, which is preposterous. That's it's insane territory. Second on the list at 2.09 is Hunter Renfrow. So I don't know what to think of this guy.
Hunter Renfrow, as good as A.J. Brown. You heard it here first.
So Brown, again, 2.67. Renfrow, 209. Terry McLaurin, 205. Debo, 204. Marquise Brown, 1.18. Renfrow is in elite, crazy company. And again, I have no idea what to make of him. I think it's a crowded receiving core at this point. Renfro, Ruggs, Tyrell Williams, Darren Waller, friggin' Jason Whitten, all the pass catching backs. I don't know what to think of him in the 14th round. Sure, fucking go for it. But I don't think I'm going to be targeting him, but I really don't know what to make of him because that's an incredible start to a career.
Hunter Renfrow, just scrappy gym rat gamer.
Lunch pail guy.
Lunch pail, yep.
Clocks in,
Cerebral.
clocks out. Yep. You know those kinds of players. All right, Nick and Clark, I'm giving you guys 5 minutes total to battle it out as to which backup Kansas City running back you should be drafting.
Oh man, Nick's gonna win that one. He does better research than me. I'll go quickly so you can hear what my arguments are. Darwin Thompson has kind of been a late starter for his entire career. He started off as a junior college guy. I think he was like offensive second team his freshman year, and then won like league MVP at the junior college level his second year. Then he went to Utah, had over 1,000 yards and looked really good. He came onto my radar because of Matt Waldman, who does fantastic film work and who's nailed a lot of running backs in the past. Like my love for Nick Chubb started with Matt Waldman, showing me him and just really respect where this guy is coming from. The drawback with Thompson is that he's a little guy. He's 5'7", 5'8", and he's about 200 pounds, which is a knock I used on Edward Solaire. But there's a bit of a difference between little guys. Sometimes you're a little Ray Rice, and sometimes you're Philip Lindsay, and neither one of those should be taken as an insult. Watching Darwin play last year, he looked like a very solid player. He could catch the ball. He was really quick. He got low all the time. He seemed to pick up his pass blocks really well. But then the concerning part is they brought in Spencer Ware instead of letting Darwin Thompson play. So he could just never really get on the field, even though he looked okay. So I'm telling myself that he's just a slow starter, and that in his second year, we should expect a lot more. And then Kansas City went and drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and it just kind of ruined my preseason narrative. But I'm picking up Thompson everywhere. He is number 2 on the depth chart behind Edwards-Helaire, and I think the talent is there. I don't think any 200-pound back in the NFL is going to make it a full season. So I'm going to stash Thompson everywhere.
So my love of Damian Williams transferred over to DeAndre Washington when Williams opted out. We talked about this a little bit previously. What Washington brings to the table is passing game chops. He's very good as a pass catcher. He's a decent runner. He played for the Raiders for 4 years. As soon as he became a free agent, Andy Reid went out and signed him. I think that speaks really highly. Reid watched him across the sidelines 8 times and said, hey, when that guy's free, I want him on my team. Something that I had totally forgotten about. The Established Run guys brought this up on one of their more recent podcasts. Washington played with Patrick Mahomes in college. And so for the 2 years that they were together at Texas Tech, which I think was under Cliff Kingsbury, which was part of the reason some of us were like real pumped up about the idea of Kingsbury getting his hands on a featured back, because he uses them really well through the passing game. But their 2 years together, I believe, were 2014 and 20. So let's only go 2015 because that was the year they really played. Mahomes didn't get a ton of run in 20. Oh no, he did. Yeah, excuse me. All right. 2014 and 2015. In 2014, DeAndre Washington totaled 30 receptions, 328 yards, 2 TDs, had a bunch of rushing yards as well. 2015 was his senior season. He totaled 41 receptions, 41 Patrick Mahomes receptions, 385 yards, 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Washington will have to learn the Chiefs playbook. Darwin Thompson has a season of not playing very much, but learning the Chiefs playbook. DeAndre Washington has 4 years NFL experience. Reid liked him enough to sign him, and he has on-field rapport of 1.5 seasons at Texas Tech, catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. That kind of a personal relationship, I think, carries immense weight in what we've talked about all offseason, the COVID offseason, where you really don't get a lot of time to practice with other people. This is very different than I was pumped up about him just from Reid wanting him to bring him onto the team, but the fact that these guys, this was his lead back in their for a whole season in college together, and they balled out together. Now again, Darwin Thompson, he's going off the board as like pick number 200 overall, and Washington is going undrafted. So, we can't poke holes too much in
these are
what
darts.
each other has to say. They are darts.
Yeah, and I think you raise a lot of really good points with Washington. Just pick one of them, right?
Yeah, just pick one of them, because I think somebody here is getting 8 to 10 touches, maybe even up to 12, given what you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be able to handle. So yeah, it's just such awesome value right here.
And if you're trying to pick between the two of them, I would make sure to key in on any kind of like practice notes that come out. And if they mention any one of these players, anytime. Nick's not getting that. I was referencing his good point earlier.
I was just playing along.
I know. I was playing you, Nick. I wanted to make sure that people knew how to figure out how to get this information. All right. Well, there you go.
I think you should skip both of them and just draft Anthony Sherman for the novelty. He's the true RB2 in Kansas City.
Just take Spencer Ware, the smartest guy in the league.
We'll each pick one backup person who could be a running back for Kansas City, and we'll see who gets the ultimate payout. And it's going to be Jordan with Anthony Sherman. He's going to somehow fall into like 4 touchdowns, and you're just like, there you go. It's more than anyone else got. Well, there's the AFC West in a full deep dive, talking about all the different players who we like and don't like. Make sure to subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us, the RB1 Fantasy Football Podcast, but also our Fantasy Baseball and Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. Follow myself at PM Rogers. You can follow Clark at NFL Clark, Jordan at Jordan_Smith27, and Nicholas at Ginger_Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week to cover the AFC East. Until then, peace.